Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field educate, inform and inspire the community to live a healthier and balanced life and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Holistic Counsellor Barbara Jackson, and we'll be talking about an holistic approach to anxiety. Welcome to the program, Barbara.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here.
Barbara, in terms of anxiety, what is it?
So, Melissa, anxiety is something that many of us experience at different periods in our life. It's the fear of what may happen. So it may be based on experiences we've had and the fear of them being repeated, or it may be the fear of new experiences. Having to see somebody we don't know, go to an environment that makes us feel unsafe, unsecure. So the anxiety is the fear of feeling threatened or feeling that we won't be able to keep safe in the space or with those people. People experience anxiety in many different ways. So there's heavy breathing, increased heart rate, adrenaline rushes, what we call our stress hormone, cortisol, also flows really, really strongly. And so we're in what we call the fight, flight or freeze mode. And sometimes people don't understand that this is actually anxiety. They may feel, oh, I felt a bit rattled in that. And when they realize that this is something that repeats quite frequently, different circumstances or the same circumstances, then they can look into and maybe understand that it is actually anxiety they're experiencing. What happens as well, they may sweat. They may have the shakes, they may feel nauseous, they may feel that they feel really weak or tired. They can also feel confused or overwhelmed. And then on a more spiritual level, they may feel completely disconnected from all the energies, all the resources that they would normally have. So many people also experience anxiety to the extent where it leads to a panic attack, which is a really exacerbated level of all of those symptoms.
With anxiety, how would you use a holistic approach to deal with it?
So a holistic approach is looking at our mental, emotional, physical and spiritual well-being. So first of all, we would check with the client if they had actually been for a medical check to see that there isn't anything physically happening, chemical imbalances or anything like that. Then we would look at their history and gently and nurturingly explore when the anxiety started, how it started. They may know, they may not recognize it. They may go, well, it just happens. I don't know. So helping them to explore the causes, the triggers of the anxiety. With the holistic approach, this may also be bringing in energy healing, something like Reiki, also looking at maybe using some essential oils, some sound healing, and we can explore that at a later date as well. It's a big topic. However, it's also helping them to get to the root cause. So when we go to the root cause, that's where the healing can begin. Clients then also learn things like breathing techniques, because when we're in that panicky, anxious state, we're not really breathing properly. When we learn to take those slower, deeper breaths, we're slowing down our heart rate. We're slowing down the adrenaline. We're slowing down the cortisol. You know, sometimes when you just take that big breath and have a sigh, and it's like, oh, that feels better. So this is very similar, except we do repetitive, slow, deep breathing. This takes a person into what we call the parasympathetic state. So it's resetting our system and bringing us back into the present, where we're then able to take that moment to go, am I safe? What is the actual fear? And how else can I navigate it in a calmer state, in a more relaxed state?
Talking about the past and, is a holistic approach based in the past?
Oh, Melissa, if we look back at Hippocrates, some people may not have heard of him. So he's a Greek person who he actually started looking at us as a whole, as a mind, body and soul. And through his studies, he actually introduced a holistic approach to well-being. And it's also important for us to understand that beyond anxiety, a holistic approach can also support us if we're experiencing depression or trauma. It can support us if we're experiencing something like low self-esteem, or when we feel that we're stuck in our lives, we don't know how to move forward. So there are various approaches and techniques within the holistic counselling that can help us to untap why we're stuck, why we're holding on to the trauma. And when we heal, the important thing to remember is our story is still our story. So we may still have had the anxiety, however, it's not all consuming now. If you take a book, a big, bright, colourful book, and you open it up, or you're watching a movie and you feel like you're stepping into the colour and you're stepping into all the emotions of it, when we heal, we're still able to tell our story. That book becomes that dusty old tatty book that we can put on the bottom of the bookshelf somewhere, because we're not stepping into the raw emotions of the anxiety or the trauma or the depression. So we're able to then move forward in life with hope, with joy, with focus, and also with strategies. When we look at our breathing, when I did talk about slowing down our breathing, there is a vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve that goes from our head all the way down to our digestive system. When we reset that, we do it through a breath that's an inhale of 5 to the count of 5, and then we exhale slowly to the count of 10. And again, this slows our whole body down, helps the shoulders drop, help us to see things a lot clearer, to focus a lot better, because we also bring in oxygen into our brain as well. So this helps us in many, many ways, and also helps our digestive system as well.
What advice would you give to people who would like to go and use this approach in their journey?
Oh, certainly, Melissa. It's first of all making sure that you seek professional advice, making sure that whoever you are going to see, that you feel you connect with them. Somebody's already anxious and they then going to a stranger, that's not necessarily going to help the anxiety. So with having that little conversation, it helps them to feel a little bit more comfortable and supported when coming to see me, or going to see any other professional as well.
Well, thank you very much for that. I learnt quite a lot.
Thank you very much.
If you would like to know more about a holistic approach to anxiety and Barbara, you can go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another guest with an interesting topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, mindset coach Sharee Shefket will be talking about how to recognise the signs of burnout.
Welcome back. Our second guest is mindset coach Sharee Shefket, and we'll be discussing how to recognise the signs of burnout. Welcome, Sharee.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I just want to know, what exactly is burnout?
Burnout is basically a mental and physical exhaustion, and it's usually work related. So it's because the pressure of the work environment has got to that person and it's now affecting them mentally and physically. So there's obviously mental and physical symptoms with burnout. So they will have a symptom of apathy, they might be cynical, they will have some physical symptoms, especially if they're working 9 to 5. They might have a really great weekend, and then that Sunday dread will come along, and so they start to feel like, oh, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, because that build up stress in their body is just overwhelming. So they have this also where they just don't care anymore, and it's like they're on autopilot in their work, so they're doing what they have to do, all the tasks, but they're not really present. Like if there's a meeting, for instance, they're just going through the motions of that task. They're not really adding value to their job. And so what happens is that over time, that person don't have any passion left and they start to feel withdrawn. They might not want to talk to their co-workers. They will maybe more irritable and snap at their co-workers for asking a silly question. But there's also a lot of stigma around burnout. So I'll give you an example as well of how I experienced burnout and later on in life how I was able to recognise the symptoms. So when I was about 20 years old, I was studying, I was working full-time, 2 jobs, the whole bit, trying to save up as much money as possible. That was my goal. And at the start, I was thriving. I was like, I could do this, I'm young, I've got the energy, I can do it all. But after some time, it obviously caught up with me, and I was literally exhausted. I would sleep and I'd get up and I felt still exhausted. I'm like, well, what is it? Like, why do I feel so tired? And I'm usually a very happy, smiley kind of person, and I just didn't have the energy. I was just doing the bare minimum I had to do because I was just so exhausted. And I recognised that this is just, something's right, I need a rest. So I approached my manager at the time and said, listen, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm literally exhausted. I just feel like I need a break. I just need to go do something fun and just get out of here. And I just had this emotional outburst, and that's another symptom. I was uncontrollably crying. I've never done that before, just started crying out of nowhere. But I was just so tired. And after that, I took that break. I made some drastic changes where I decided that money wasn't as important and my self-care was, and I left that position. So that's when I decided that I'm going to now make some changes, because I hadn't experienced burnout yet. I was just recognising the symptoms, and that's what's really important.
It sounds quite similar to depression. So what is the difference between burnout, depression and stress?
Great question. So let's talk about stress first. So stress can be quite beneficial sometimes. So for example, if you've got a big task to do, like a dinner party for instance, and you've got a bit of stress happening, it's just excitement a little bit, and it gets you under the pump, and it could be quite useful sometimes. When stress becomes chronic, that can lead to burnout, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Now let's look at depression. Now depression is a mood disorder. So with depression, it's total apathy, a sense of hopelessness, a lot more physical and mental symptoms happening with depression, and it will seep through all areas of your life. Whereas burnout will be more confined into the workplace. It can also affect your personal life, but not so much. So someone who's, say, experiencing burnout might love their weekend, but they'll have that dread on that Sunday night lead back to work. Where someone who's depressed, it doesn't matter what day it is. And the difference between someone who's experiencing burnout and depression is that chronic stress. So I could take someone who is experiencing burnout and take them to the Greek islands, pamper them all day, have massages, cocktails, have some vitamin D, having that gorgeous weather, and they will start to go back into themselves and feel less stress. That nervous system starts calming down, and you'll say to them, okay, when you come back to work, we've offloaded half your tasks, so you're not going to feel as overwhelmed, and that person will be able to start to enjoy their career again. Not so much with depression. I could take them to the same person to the Greek islands. It doesn't really matter, that mood disorder. But burnout can lead to depression, something that needs to be concerned about, that we don't want that to happen at all.
So what are some tips then to prevent burnout?
The biggest prevention is self-care. When you're in a workplace, you might be allocated an allowance for a therapist, and a lot of workplaces now encourage, because they recognise that burnout is a problem in the workplace. So there are free resources if you have a 9-to-5 type of employment and have access to that therapist, which is fantastic, and I recommend utilising that. And you don't even have to tell your manager because of the stigma. You might just say, I just want to organise this session, and it's usually confidential, which is great in terms of arranging that session. Now, if you're self-employed, obviously you don't have those resources in place, so you can obviously find your own therapist, which is fantastic, but also implement a lot of self-care. What is it that you like to do? Do you connect with people? Are you doing any healthy habits? Are you taking regular breaks? Are you maybe doing some meditation? So have a look and see how much self-care are you doing during the week, because when you are self-employed, you become a little bit obsessed with your business to recognise the symptoms before it manifests into burnout. Prevention is key.
Thank you so much for your advice on that topic. If you'd like to know more about Sharee and the signs and symptoms of burnout, you can visit Sharee's webpage via our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. After the break, we'll be back with another guest and another interesting conversation.
Stay tuned. After the break, holistic grief counsellor Gemma Kyriakou will be talking about managing the grief of a miscarriage. Welcome back. Our last guest is holistic grief counsellor Gemma Kyriakou, and we'll be discussing how to manage the grief of a miscarriage. Welcome, Gemma.
Thank you, Melissa.
How can we support parents that are going through miscarriage?
A lot of women I know will want to self-isolate and hide away. It's really staying in contact, and even just a text message to keep the lines of communication open, talking about it, not pretending like it never happened. A woman's body will be going through so much physically and emotionally, and we need to allow her space for that to process. Emotionally, there's a lot that's happening hormonally. The woman's body will be going through a lot physically as well, which will have a painful aspect to that, whether she decides at whichever week she miscarried, she will have the decision on whether she would like to miscarriage naturally or through a procedure, and that again will depend on other factors as well. Now we also have to remember the partner's mental health through this. Generally, the husband, he has to, come in and support and hold space for his partner through such a difficult time, which he can't 100% relate to. He doesn't understand what it's like to lose, a life inside of you. And there's nothing you can say to a woman or parents, for that matter. There's nothing you can say to them to make them feel better in that moment. The best thing you can do is literally just to be there for them. But with looking after the man's mental health, the husband, the partner's mental health as well, and checking in on them to see how they are, because the emphasis will generally always be on the woman, which we have to, because physically she's going through something that is very traumatic. There isn't anything you can say to a woman to make her feel better, or parents, for that matter, to make them feel better in a situation of a miscarriage. I know for myself, going through a very long fertility journey, and having procedures, going through IVF, and then getting pregnant with my first baby, and then seeing the baby on the monitor and the heartbeat, and then the baby died. There's nothing you can say to a woman that goes through that, because it was such a long journey to get there. And then, that happened. It can affect your faith in, say, your religion. That's very common to happen with such traumatic endings. But I can tell you, in time, you do get that faith back again. It's a lot to process, and we have to acknowledge our feelings and our emotions. I definitely wanted to self-isolate. I wanted to hide away until I got pregnant again, just to make it easier on myself, because there's always christenings, there's always kids' birthday parties, and you get to an age in your life as a woman where all your friends are getting married and having children. And it's very painful to have to, see, you're happy for people, of course you are, you're really happy for people to, announce their pregnancies, there's no doubt about that. But it's also really painful when you haven't got there yet and you've had miscarriage after miscarriage, or you're on a really long IVF journey. So we need to, again, really acknowledge those feelings, and everything we feel is validated, keeping those lines of communication open, talking to a friend, because we don't want to get to a place where we're mentally affecting ourselves. We don't want to have anxiety. We need to be, our bodies need to be in homeostasis to carry, a pregnancy to term. That's what we need to be.
Is miscarriage still a taboo subject?
It's a very sensitive topic, and I like to think that society is becoming more compassionate and aware of miscarriage and how to support women and parents in this very challenging time of their lives. Miscarriage Australia statistics show that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which primarily happens in the first trimester. That's 25% of pregnancies. Which actually equates to 285 miscarriages per day. That's a lot. But not to instill fear into anyone, this is really just having an understanding and knowing that you're not a number. Whilst it does happen frequently, this is to have some understanding about how fragile life can be. There are many factors as to why miscarriage occurs, and some of the reasons are completely unknown.
So what advice would you give for people dealing with the grief of a miscarriage?
The advice I would give to people that are experiencing miscarriage is to literally take each day by day. You really have to be kind to yourself, honour how you feel, really look after yourself, really set yourself personal boundaries. If it's going to be too much for you to go to that birthday party, don't go. We're not talking about avoiding situations forever, but in the short term, a slight distraction of not going can be beneficial. Avoiding our triggers long term is not something I would advise, but short term, just do whatever you need to do to get through to the next stage of your healing journey. And of course, always, if you feel that you need extra support, talk to someone, a professional that knows what you're going through, so you can feel understood and not misunderstood as many people do. Because what happens when we go through such traumatic experiences, we can express ourselves in a way that is misunderstood through anger or rage, or just isolation and not saying anything. Everyone will react differently. So really just to be kind to yourself and find that support with someone that can resonate with how you feel and take you through the steps to feel emotionally well again.
Thank you for sharing your story with us today, Gemma.
Thank you.
If you'd like to know more about how to manage the grief of a miscarriage and Gemma, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. That's all we have time for today. Until next week, goodbye.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.